Good morning, everyone. We hope you're all having a wonderful day so far. My name is Alfredo Dela Cruz.
I'm Chris Lambert.
I'm Brandon Wyman.
And we are Team 5. We're going to be presenting Chapter 3, Make the Most of the Message. Okay, so with today's material, we break it down into two sections, right? Make your message memorable and consider the medium. Okay, we have hook the audience, structure in an engaging way, take steps to improve recall, compare presentations to other options, and use another medium with your presentation. Now, with that being said, we're going to start off by showing you a short video. It's a TED Talk by Jane McGonigal. Okay, she's going to start off talking about how do you improve your lifespan by gaming. Okay, so it's a very interesting talk. Hope you guys enjoy it.
I'm a gamer, so I like to have goals. I like special missions and secret objectives. So here's my special mission for this talk. I'm going to try to increase the lifespan of every single person in this room by 7.5 minutes. Literally, you will live 7.5 minutes longer than you would have otherwise just because you watched this talk.
Okay, so why did we show you that video? The hook. Okay, have you ever found yourself in front of an audience presenting and wondering, is the audience listening to what I'm saying? Is the audience even interested in the material I'm presenting? The hook is designed to get the attention of everyone in the room for at least a fraction of the time, to increase the probability that they will understand your message. We just saw it here, right? The first time I saw this video, I was like, what am I watching? Increase my lifespan by watching you talk. How is that possible? But she did it for that purpose, right? I watched it more intently. I watched the whole video, and I could see it. You guys were watching it, even if it was for just a second. You guys were actually paying attention to what she was saying. You're wondering why. Why? How are you going to do this? How is this possible? And to make it clear, getting the audience attention, it's not an easy thing to do, right? Especially when you have material that's, boring, maybe clear, cut and dry. Not to say that, the chapters in our textbook are boring, right? But it can be tough. It can be difficult. So, hook the audience attention, okay? Begin in a compelling way. Begin in a way that's interesting. Something that will catch their attention, even for a minute, for a second even. Just so you have that chance of getting their attention so they pay attention to the message, to the material you're trying to relate. And using emphasis, right? She told you, I will lengthen your lifespan by 7.5 minutes. How is that possible, right? But it caught people's attention. They were like, this can't be right. Last note, analyze what will get attention. As a speaker, as a presenter, you should be researching your audience. You should understand what it is that they're doing here, right? Why are they listening to you? Why are they sitting in those chairs, in those tables, in front of you, looking at you, listening to you talk? Are they there because they're interested in the material? Or do you have to perhaps make it a little bit interesting because they're here mandatory for class? Okay. With that said, I'll pass it on to Christopher.
All right, thank you, Alfredo. So another way of making your message memorable is by structuring it in an engaging way. And one of the most common ways is to use the direct approach, where your audience typically pays the most attention at the beginning of your presentation and at the end. So that's where you want to put your conclusions. It saves the audience time and gets right to the point, so the audience will know what your main point is at the beginning, and then you can restate it at the end. And another way to structure it in an engaging way is by breaking down information into chunks. So just creating like different topics or logical topics, subcategories. It allows the audience to understand the information, because if you just give them a ton of information, they're not going to be able to understand it. So by breaking it down into little bite-sized chunks, they're able to absorb all the information and better remember your message. And you can also explain the flow of your presentation by choosing like a common theme, explaining new information when you present it, or telling them when you're going to present new information. And that lets the audience pay attention more and gives them a better idea of the organization of the overall presentation. And you can also preview the material. By giving the audience an idea of what you're going to talk about before you get into the details, they'll be able to better understand and take away your message. And with that, I'll pass it on to Randy.
So, as Chris and Alfredo talked about, we want to help make your message memorable. So, as we've mentioned, you want to hook the audience, grab their attention, then you want to engage, and you want to structure in an engaging way throughout your presentation. Now, I want to talk about just how to take the steps to help them improve their recall. So, one of the biggest mistakes when presenting is, as presenters, relaying too much information and not having the audience enough time to digest everything. So, what we want to do, we want to help them just connect the dots, so to speak. Just help them understand that exactly that we're trying to get across, without too much detail and losing their engagement. So, a couple steps that I want to talk about. You want to share the meaning before the details. Just like Chris said, you want to use that direct approach. At the very beginning, just get those main ideas across. Get your main point of the message you're trying to get across as you structure it on with the details, and then at the end conclude it and just reinforce your main ideas. Now, the next point, show them, don't just tell them. Visual aids is very important. So actually, I brought a couple visual aids to help kind of relay the couple messages that we're talking about today. So, all right. You want to hold that? Hold that for me, sir. All right. So, one of our favorite characters in the media, Donald Trump. Now, for the purposes of our presentation, we want to help you remember what we're talking about. So, hook the audience. You can say just from the picture, he's probably got the audience's attention, but maybe what he's saying. But again, we want to help you remember just with our points that, in a presentation, you want to get the audience engagement, get their attention. Chris has just a nice little structure, some aqueducts. It's a really, really unique and pretty structure created by the Romans. But again, for our presentation, structure. So you want to structure an engaging way in your presentation. And for me, just recall, remember. How can you remember, what's being said? So again, you want to grab their attention and show them with visual aids, anything that you can help them just remember your presentation. So, and then my next point, just reinforce what needs to be said. And again, throughout your presentation, those main ideas, get them across throughout. Mnemonic devices are very useful. So, which actually, we created just a little mnemonic device for y'all. HAST, just again, hook the audience. You want to structure in an engaging way, and then take steps to improve recall. And then lastly, give the audience a break. Presentation can be rather long, and it's hard. It can be very tough to keep that audience engagement throughout. Coffee breaks, stretch breaks, anything that you can, little chunks of time just for the audience to just digest what has been said, and then as you move along throughout your presentation to help them just understand it throughout. So, all right, someone pass the words.
So with that, we're going to move on to the next section, and just kind of going back to where we explain the flow as part of structuring in an engaging way. You just let your audience know that new information is being presented. So we're going to move on to the second part of our presentation, considering the medium. So if you have a presentation, comparing presentations to other options, sometimes the presentation may not be the best option for your intended, for what you intend. For example, like if the information that you wanted to present was very confidential or very sensitive, perhaps a more private conversation would be a better approach. Instead of a presentation in a large room full of people, and you may be worried about information leaks, you can just meet one-on-one with people privately. like a video conference or just a conference call as an example of an alternative. If the intent was to get a lot of audience feedback, because with a presentation, you're more in control and there's not a lot of audience engagement and feedback, but if that was something that you wanted, was a lot of audience ideas and input, perhaps you could just consider just a simple meeting. And with the presentation as well, you're also speaking and presenting information that you can't always take back. You know, when you speak, you can't go back and say, oh, I meant to say this or I meant to say that. But if you might want to make sure that your audience gets the message exactly right, perhaps you could just write it or give them a written email or handout or anything like that. And that's just another options to consider instead of a presentation. You don't have to consider these options. You can also supplement your presentation with another medium, which Randall will talk about.
Yes, and lastly, we want to just mention another medium that you can use, distributing handouts and email materials can be very useful in the presentation. You know, actually, for our presentation, we actually have some quizzes for you at the end that we're going to distribute that kind of help you see how maybe well we presented our material. But, you know, in a presentation too, you want to be careful when distributing handouts. Depends on the material that you're trying to present. You know, maybe you have a lot of data that you're trying to present to, you know, a accounting firm. You know, spreadsheets can be very useful to help them follow along throughout the presentation, but you don't want to necessarily pass it out in certain presentations where it can be distracted and lose their engagement throughout. So, layer your communication. It doesn't just stop at the end of your presentation. You know, meetings after, you know, a presentation, again, emailing the group that you presented to, just to follow up on what you've trying to convey to your audience. And then include some interaction, some question and answering through your presentation with, you know, to get the audience to see if they're really responsive, they're understanding what's going on. I want to just quickly ask, just a show of hands, if we showed our acronym again, HATS, if you could, just a show of hands, could you write down each word of what it means? Just want to say, okay. So again, it just shows us too how we're conveying our message too. And again, you just want to do everything you can just to grab the audience attention, structure it throughout, help them recall, and if you need to, consider any different types of mediums. So, finish up.
Okay, so just a quick summary of what we're presenting, making the most of your message, right? Make your message memorable. We talked about these three things. Hooking the audience, very important. Structure in an engaging way, and take steps to improve your audience's recall, so they have a better chance of remembering what you actually spoke about for however long. Consider the medium. Compare presentation to other options. A presentation is not always the best form to relate your message. Use another medium with your presentation, like Randall did. Visuals are great. Auditory, you can only go so far, right? You need something else to enhance the message. So with that, if you guys have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them. If not, we know you're dying to get through quiz. Okay? So, quiz question. In the book, blank is given as an example of having a well-publicized star moment by releasing mosquitoes into an auditorium. Number 2, which one of the following is a way you can hook the audience attention? Number 3, you can make your message memorable by blank. Number 4, what can you do to structure your presentation in a more engaging way? And number 5, what things should you think about when considering your meeting?